Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us today for the 1004 show. We're here with Colleen LaRose of NERETA. How's it going, Colleen?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Absolutely. NERETA is obviously a wonderful acronym for the Northeast Regional Employment and Training Association. In one sentence, we like to test people hard here. In one sentence, what is NERETA to you and to the outside world?
NERETA is an organization that strives to bring together workforce development, economic development, and higher education to create economic growth in regions across the country that is more powerful than they can do working in silos by themselves.
So bringing together workforce development, economic development, and higher education to work more as one to make that area that they're in together.
Yes.
So real quickly, so for people who don't understand those pieces, higher ed is anything after your senior year of high school?
Yes.
And
Yes.
workforce development is what?
Workforce development is comes under the United States Department of Labor. There's actually a legislative act called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that was passed under President Obama, bipartisan support. But that is where the Congress allocates the funding to operate the Department of Labor. And under that funding, then that money trickles down to state departments of labor, and then the state departments of labor allocate those funds to local entities in order to operate employment and training activities for their regions.
Very cool. And economic development to you is what? Just so that we have all the buzzwords done.
Yeah, economic development is not a system the way that workforce development is. Economic development is local entities or regional entities, can be state entities that determine that they want to work on the economy of whatever that locale is that they've determined is their territory, and it's competitive in nature. They are aggressively trying to recruit and retain and grow businesses in their region.
Got it. And so when we're talking about workforce development, that can change from locality to locality, or are they pretty much the same no matter where you are?
Workforce development tries to be a system. So it tries to be, it's not quite McDonald's, I mean, it's not, you can't go into every place and expect exactly the same thing, but you can expect some certain basic services. So if you were to walk into what used to be called one-stop career centers, they're now called job centers, but that's where your Department of Labor, your unemployment office, your vocational services, the vocational rehab services, those kinds of things are all located. And, for the most part, they're all going to be able to offer you services in basic job search. They can put you on a computer. They can show you how to access job listings. They can help you with your resume as a job seeker. They also work with employers in helping them to find the right talent for their businesses.
And so it doesn't matter if you're manufacturing something or if you're coding something. The next Facebook, the workforce is the workforce, and there's a system that's been put in place that can help them.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of different talent pipelines. I don't
Sure.
want to make it seem quite that simple, but yes, the only way that they divide people up is because of funding streams,
Mm-hmm.
and so there are different funding streams for youth and for veterans and for displaced homemakers and for people who are on the welfare rolls and those kinds of things. There's different ways that they get money in, and so there are different programs that are developed in order to serve those populations. But for the most part, for basic services, yes, everybody gets the same basic services.
How lovely. So we were talking about one of the ways that you learned to kind of grow your business over the years was through webinars, and that people that might be working at some of these other organizations that you work with aren't necessarily up to date with, it's May 22nd, 2017 right now. They might not be up to date with, the newest technologies. And so you implemented and kind of executed a strategy that they might not have been familiar with, but you did it and you've done it for years. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you evolved webinars to them or rolled out webinars to them, and how they've received it and how you kind of kept them up to date with learning, instead of necessarily being in a one-on-one place or kind of a standard conference.
I recognized early on that there was an opportunity to educate a lot of the people across the country who do the kind of work, workforce development work, economic development work. We've only started working with higher education in the last year, so I'm going to stay with economic development and workforce development. But what I recognized is, as I said, my charge has been trying to get them to work more closely together, and they have a lot of problems working together because they speak different languages in a lot of cases. They have different priorities. They work in different systems. They don't really talk with one another very much. And what I recognized with the webinars, Zach, is that it was an opportunity for me to talk with both of them at the same time. They could kind of sign in even if they weren't in the same location together. So I might be talking to a workforce development person in Wisconsin and an economic development person in Texas, but basically they have the same philosophies as if they were talking to their own economic development person in their own local region. I always say they have different personalities. Workforce development tends to be much more empathetic and working, they've often been thought of as working only with like impoverished people and, helping them to find employment, or working with people with low literacy skills and those kinds of things. Workforce development people do tend to be more social services oriented, where economic development people tend to be much more, business minded. And so they're, much more digital in how they're handling things. They're much more focused on, funding, getting money into the area and creating jobs and providing tax incentives to the businesses and those kinds of things. So what was important about the webinars was that I was able to get these different personalities together, even if they weren't in the same location, and get them to start communicating with one another.
Did you change up your script while you were talking to them, or did you know the kind of the common words that they were using and kind of use those together? How did you kind of communicate that piece?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been a process. I've been going on LinkedIn groups, and I've been what I call cross-pollinating or providing translation services, if you will. So I went on LinkedIn groups in economic development, and I would ask them, well, what does this cluster thing mean? Or what does what's a sector to you? And then I go to like workforce development groups and ask them the same kinds of questions. And then I would start as I'm having the webinars, start saying, well, workforce development calls it this and economic development calls it that. One of the most important things that we did was to give them a common language for planning, because if we're asking them to plan together in their local region, some of them, and this is true of all planners, but some people call one thing a goal and another thing a strategy and another thing an objective, and, they don't really have like this common language for planning. And so I decided that I would use the language that I learned in graduate school, which is vision, mission, goals, objectives, strategies, and tactics. And I was going to teach that as this is going to be our language. This is how we're going to use planning language from now on, both workforce development and economic development. And, and we'll work it through from there. So that's been helpful because that gave them then kind of a baseline of being able to communicate with one another about what it is that they're trying to achieve in their regions.
So you said vision, mission, goals, strategy, tactics. Did I miss one?
Vision, mission, goals, objectives, which is really important because objectives are what you measure. That's how you know whether or not you're attaining your goals.
Of course, I would miss the one
Yeah,
where you have to track things. Funny me. I don't want to know what the objectives are, and then strategy and tactics. Okay, cool. So you understood that they were basically talking about the same thing, but they might be going at it a different way and communicating with people a different way. I see kind of that in my world where we talk with economic developments, their customers, and we say, hey, we both want the same result. We're just on the ground level, and you guys are kind of in the big towers. So how can we get that same kind of information out to people that don't even know to come to you, but because we're kind of a big loud business, people will come and listen to us and ask us for that help. And so it's interesting, and we're learning as we're growing, how to communicate, the way we communicate direct to a business who's a customer and the way that we communicate with a city are completely different things, even though the end user is the same and they all want the same goal, which is to grow. And so it's interesting that you have to change up your keywords and your buzzwords depending on who you're talking to, even though at the end of the day, almost exclusively everyone wants the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Think about it this way: is that like if there was an empty store in your downtown, and you had a bunch of people, like you said, okay, we're going to stand on the corner, and we're going to hand out Post-it notes and ask people, I wish this building was a whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And some people are going to want a coffee shop, and some people are going to want a barber shop, and whatever, Now, how do you then translate that to, once you gather up all these Post-it notes, right, and you put it into some kind of a format, and you go, okay, well, 20% of the people want this to be, a barber shop, and 40% of the people want it to be a coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so now how do you begin to work that through with economic development and say to them, okay, we know we have some entrepreneurs who might be ready to step into owning a business. We can help them to get the financing. We know that the community is going to support this, and how can we work with you, economic development, in making this part of the strategy for the community? And that's where your common planning language would come in, because you both have a vision now for making this whatever, if you've decided it's going to be a coffee shop, now you have a vision for that. And you can actually then begin working with the entrepreneur at that level also, and teaching them that same strategic planning language, so that you're all talking the same thing.
How do you, and this may or may not be in your alley, but how do you track that those people that filled out that Post-it note are actually the right customers? So in my world, I would say, just because you get information doesn't mean that information is kind of validated in any kind of way. And so my mom, when I was a kid, told me I was a great singer. Fast forward to 7th grade, I try out for chorus, and my choir teacher was like, you're terrible. Why do you think you're good at this? And I'm like, well, my mom told me I was always good. And so are those people on the street corner actually customers? And how could you validate in that kind of way to understand that you're getting solid information? I guess, verified information. How would you go about figuring that out?
Well, I think, one of the things that I would do is I'd ask them, where do they live? Are they people who would be, in the region who would be utilizing that service? And if they, I would be on the corner kind of talking with them. If they said, oh, I wish this was a coffee shop, I'd be asking them, well, where do you get your coffee now? Right. So, you just kind of would try to engage them further and dig a little deeper and find out, why they think this would be the appropriate place, and what would be the alternative. I'll tell you, when I was a workforce investment board director, they were going to close down one of my workforce, one of my one-stops, and I went and stood in line and started talking with the people who were using the services of this location that was going to be closed. And I said, if this was closed, where would you go? How would you get, workforce services? And most of the people that I talked to told me that they would go to the library. So, that was a way for me to kind of engage with them. And then it also told me, I need to go to the libraries and start talking with them and see if we can set up some kind of system for helping people with their job search, because this location is going to be closed down. So, sometimes you just, it's really engaging with the community and finding out what are their needs, and what are their, not more than their wants, but what are their needs? How are you going to provide service for them?
Interesting. So I'm looking through my notes, and you talk about how is workforce evolving. You call it TIBOT. So the T is technology as a game changer, innovation, a foresight of and entrepreneurship driven. B is the building of networks and connections is needed. Organic financing and talent. So technology obviously is a huge buzzword. There's obviously subsets of technology in there, whether it's cybersecurity, software, etc. Like, how do you build a workforce though, knowing that technology is changing every day?
Well, okay. The first thing we have to talk about is we're not going to be able to prepare people for the jobs that are going to be here in 10 years because we don't know what they're going to be. Um, what are the basic skills that people need to have, though, in order to be effective going into the future? What are those? Those basic skills are going to be adaptability. They're going to be able to communicate well. Let me give you a quick example, Zach. The president of Thomas Jefferson University wrote an article about a year ago, and he said that they're no longer going to require med students to take chemistry, to have chemistry and physics and things like that in their background of education. That's pretty amazing, frankly, because that's really what if you wanted to be a doctor in the past, you had to take all the science courses. But they say now that doctors don't need that because that's all going to be done through technology now. So if they need a formula or whatever, they need, they what they need are really, really good communication skills so that they can talk to the patient and find out all the details of what's going on and then input that information into a computer. So communication skills are really going to be critical, but that adaptability of being able to maneuver within the new economy is also critical. We used to go to a job. Your grandparents and my parents would go to a job for 30 years and have retire with a lot. That doesn't happen anymore. People in and out, using their skills, their marketing, their discrete skills. I About 4 years ago, I went to a startup weekend, had an idea. It's called Templio.com. I'm still looking for a funder, by the way. You can help me with this. But the idea is that people don't need a chronological resume. If I do grant writing, if I come to you with a chronological resume, you'd have to go through 20 years of my past to find all the places I've written grants for. But if I wanted to go to somebody, I can write a grant for you. What they really want to know is just who did I write grants for before, and did I win them, And, like, what were the amounts? They want maybe a short abstract. They want to talk to people that I've written grants for before, right? So that's a discrete skill that I'm trying to sell in the marketplace. That's a lot different than selling giving somebody a chronological resume like we used to. So the whole economy has changed in how we interact with one another and the kinds of opportunities that are now.
So I mean, let's hit on that a little bit more. So knowing that the way that, I hate this word, but how millennials think, or how whatever the next generation is thinking, where it's more of this, right, than this, right? How do you, and knowing that, adaptability and the key, one of the keys is that they'll need to be able to communicate well. Like, this is making it so people don't communicate that same way. So how do you, how do we even begin making sure? So in our backyard, there's a shipyard here, and they have 20,000 available jobs. Right? Workforce development's working hard to try and improve it, but at the end of the day, is that that's a lot of jobs? I don't know if they'll ever fulfill or even get close to that number. How do you start communicating with kids knowing that they literally grew up on that?
Well, it's actually, there's some things out now that they're saying it's actually changing our brains. I have to relate a personal.
The phone is changing the brain.
The compute using computers is actually, at an early age is actually changing our brains. But I have to relate this personal story. I was talking to my nephew the other day, and I said, well, when's the last time you talked to your grandfather? He's 90, going to be 92 this year. My nephew is 40, And my nephew said, "Well, grandfather doesn't text. That's the only way I communicate." And I thought, wow, and this is a really sensitive guy. I mean, this isn't somebody who's like rude or, but it really was, like he had to step back and really recognize that, oh, I guess I have to communicate the way that grandfather does and call him or go see him because, he's not going to text with me. And that
Right.
means so we're losing relationships. We're losing the ability to even recognize or understand how to build relationships. And we're losing a lot of social capital that way. At the same time, we have things like LinkedIn where I can now reach like a CEO or something where the gatekeepers used to keep me away from being able to reach
Right.
people like that. So our ability to communicate well is much worse. I think that this is in part why people don't trust the media. They're unable to discern what's real news and what's fake news and those kinds of things because they're unable to communicate well themselves.
Hmm.
That's a big part of it. Listening and
But there's also
discern.
a trust factor there, right? Like we're taught that the media is someone that you can trust. So I have a journalism degree, and
Uh-huh.
so I feel that there is. I don't even know what to believe sometimes because I don't even know that those journalists, have done even like a glimmer of what I was taught to do in school, whether it's fact checking or just sources or anything like that. So it's I can't even watch things anymore because I don't even know, is that person credible? Has that person done the things that?
Or is it entertainment, right? I mean, so a
Well,
lot of
it's
these
definitely
are,
entertainment, right? I mean, there's
and,
there's
and they're run by corporations, and that, I mean, how much can you trust, whether they're being, hiding a story because they don't want, to make the corporation look bad or whatever. So yeah, there's, but you know what, Zach, those have always been issues.
Mm-hmm.
Those have always been issues. So nothing really has changed.
Sure. But we are
You know,
seeing more of it now because people can touch it more often.
I think what we're seeing now is that there are a lot more people who are actively blogging and are being journalists themselves,
Right.
because we do have 30% of the country who has a bachelor's degree, so we're an educated population of people who have poor social skills.
How is that 30% compared to other countries? A bachelor's.
um, you know, I'd have to look it up for you. I think that in a lot of the more developed countries that we're probably on track. There's some that probably have more bachelors than we do. But I could get you a list.
I was just
I
wondering. It seemed like I never heard that stat, so it's always interesting to see stuff like that. I totally agree with you with LinkedIn. It's so interesting that you can just simply, as I'm looking at it right now, you can just type CEO, and you get a list of CEOs or people that have CEO in their title, and it's incredible what you have at your fingertips. So, how do you use social media? Do you? Use,
Oh, LinkedIn is my best friend. It really is. I'm putting together this huge conference, and I put one together last year. What I found is my constituency enjoyed the webinars, but the one thing that they felt I was lacking was providing them with the opportunity to network in person.
okay.
And so we did an event last year for them around the topic of developing a talent pipeline for the manufacturing industry. And this year we're doing a conference around two topics, actually. One is developing a talent pipeline for the tech industry, and the other is the second day is about supporting business growth and entrepreneurship. And what we have, almost every single person who is coming, I found through LinkedIn. So coming to present, um, it's just absolutely amazing.
The conference, and you're putting on several tracks, and
Yes, so actually, the people who are coming to present are some of the most well-respected people in these fields not only in the country, but in some cases in the world. For example, we have Dr. Eric Hansen, who's coming from Economic Transformations Group. He was one of the people who helped to start Silicon Valley. He was one of the four
wow.
founders of the Competitiveness Institute in Barcelona, Spain. He was a predecessor, really, of the work that Michael is doing at Harvard Business School. I mean, when I put Dr. Hansen's name out there, I get emails from Turkey and Ethiopia and Chile, and I mean the man, he's done cluster strategies in Nepal and everywhere around the world, and he's going to be at our event. And how did I find Dr. Hansen? On LinkedIn. Just as I have, all these other, I've got the chancellor's office from the California community colleges is coming. We have, absolutely. I mean, you'd have to look. I'm going to do a little plug here now. So the event website is summit, MMIT, NERETA, NERETA.org. Okay, so summit.nereta.org. And if you look at summit.nereta.org and you look at the agenda, you're going to be knocked out. I mean, the people who are coming are just absolutely stellar. And as I said, almost every single one of them I found on LinkedIn, just, whether it was groups and having discussions with them in groups, and we found that we had some things in common. In one case, the chancellor's office in California, I actually sent out a tweet about some of the work that we're doing, and she tweeted, a woman from that office tweeted back and said, well, look at the program we're doing. And so I said, oh, that's fantastic. Can you come and talk about it at the conference? So it's, social media has been the way, really, truly, that I've been able to build NERETA. And I've built tremendous, credibility and capital, I guess you would say, networking capital that frankly other associations that have been around for many, many years don't have. I mean, every person who's come here could be a keynote speaker at one of their conferences, because I have so many top coming to speak at my conference. They are not using social media in the same way that I am, and so they don't have any fear of speakers that I have coming.
How many people do you think, or how many people attended last year, and how many people will attend this year?
We had about 100 people attend last year. The attendance has been low. Only that I'm still getting my legs under me. That was our first one. This year we're hoping to double that if we can to 200. We'd like to have 200 at the event. I've got room for 500, so come on, come to the event.
We have done quite a few events ourselves, thousands, not all about 100 people, but we've done a lot over the years, and it getting people to show up is always a fun and tricky thing. How many people do you think annually listen or attend one of your webinars?
Well, I communicate a lot by newsletter, so I would say that I get more attention from my newsletters than I do the webinars. I charge for the webinars. Anytime you charge somebody for something, it reduces the number of people who attend significantly.
It does, but you don't do free work.
That is true, and that is the secret sauce here, is trying to figure out how to monetize this. I'm doing well as far as credibility and getting in with the right people, and I'm in the know when people are invited to come speak at conferences. That's all really cool, but I'm not making a lot of money here. I'm not making very much at all. So, if anything, frankly, if the IRS is listening, I'm not making anything.
Just look at Colleen's tax return from last year, and you'll know that's the truth, right? Colleen, I appreciate it. If people want to learn more about your company, NERETA, they can go to NERETA, NERETA.org. Again, it's NERETA.org. If you are listening in May or June of 2017, you can go to summit.nereta.org to check out the Job Creation Summit, or probably the 2018 version, or 2019 version, or 2020 version if you're listening years and years later. Quick wrap up. How would someone use LinkedIn to their advantage? So you talked about groups, you found all these people there. Like, what are some quick hacks that someone could use to master LinkedIn as well as you have?
Well, the first thing that you want to do is go in, set up a decent profile for yourself. Spend a little time putting a good profile for yourself, so that people, when they do come and look for who you are, they are reasonably impressed. I mean, with what you've done. That helps to generate conversations. And then you should definitely go in and sign up for a half dozen, dozen groups that are um, closely aligned to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So if you have uh, I don't if you have a coffee shop and you're trying to, that's probably a bad example, but but whatever the business is that you're trying to generate,
Yeah.
we'll go with coffee shop. So not only LinkedIn, but in that case Facebook, go on like community boards, see what people are doing, what they're talking about. Um, Look for information from your state. Look for information from, if I had a coffee shop, I'd be looking at the small business development centers and the small business administration, and I'd be looking at, women in business. I'd be joining groups that are specifically for women in business. Um, I'd be learning about, how to become a certified woman in business. I mean, there are lots of things, and all of, you can find so many of these things. And then when you get into a group, it's like a cocktail party. Start by listening. This is the Carnegie 101, if you will. So go in and start by listening to what the people are talking about. And then you drop in and you drop a couple of thoughts, into the comment area. And then after you've listened for a couple of minutes, then you go in and post something. And, so say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a coffee shop in, downtown Seattle. What do you think? And so then, people may go, well, most people go to Starbucks around here, but, tell us why it's going to be different or why you should go there. And then you start a communication. And they might advise you that that's a bad idea, or they might say, "Hey, that's great. I'm gonna allow people to have dogs, like bring their pets with them when my shop." Oh, wow, that's really different. That's something. So whatever it is that you're doing that makes you have a special niche, you want to talk about that. But remember, when you're on LinkedIn, it's like a cocktail party, and nobody wants to talk to somebody who only does all the talking. So you want to make sure that you, as well as you go in and post and talk about what you're doing, you also have to be a polite cocktail party person and go in and talk, like comment on things that other people post and give them ideas and share, and make sure that you're there to share and not just to broadcast.
No, absolutely. So create a decent profile, make them impressed, sign up for groups, people that are aligned with you, and act like you're at a cocktail party, and then drop in and wow them. So great stuff on how to be great at LinkedIn. We're talking with Colleen LaRose of NERETA. You can find her and her company at NERETA.com. I appreciate your time today. .org, NERETA.org. I was testing you. Testing you. I don't know what happens if you go to NERETA.com, so don't go there. So go to NERETA.org. It's NERETA. Appreciate your time today on the 1004 show, and keep the workforce world growing.
Thank you so much.